Welcome Capricorn to your in-depth monthly horoscope for August 2023. Going to give you some standout details to begin with, but please stay with me. I will explore in much greater detail all the influences and timings particularly relevant to your sign. Your ruler is Saturn, so we have to look at that first of all. And Saturn is truly influential this month. When is Saturn not truly influential? But Saturn applies to Mercury on the 2nd of August in an opposition and broadly through the first 4 days, and then links to the blue moon, which occurs on the last day of the month on the 31st. And both of those are going to be quite pivotal, and there is a link between them as well, which I will explain to you next. We also have Venus in a retrograde all this month, coming into a perfect conjunction with the Sun on the 13th. So lots of exciting news to share with you. Please stay with me for more. I'd like to share with you a very special opportunity. This year is absolutely racing by, and year 2024 is speeding towards us. However, if you order your year 2024 personal horoscope forecast now, based on your unique birth data, I will prepare for you the rest of year 2023 free of charge. But also within my package of 30% off, you can get your character analysis report, your life roadmap. This helps you to understand the patterns that have played out in your journey so far. Some of these definitely give us opportunities, but others can be more challenging, and a more intimate understanding of these helps us to seize our potential more firmly. Please see the link beneath this video for more on this unique opportunity. So Capricorn, let's unpack August for you. It begins with a full moon. This is when the moon's in opposition to the Sun, and it occurs twice this month. The first on day 1 in the sign of Aquarius, which shares your rulership of Saturn, but Aquarius also has Uranus as the modern ruler, the higher octave ruler. So what we have here for you is the position of the moon in Aquarius is asking you to think about your everyday situation when it comes to your sense of self-worth, but also your ins and outgoings, your money. Now, the Sun and the retreating Venus are in house 8, which is a very sensual combination, and they're going to be shimmering very close together, as I said, as the month goes on, and then into an exact connection on the 13th. So I will follow that theme shortly, but this particular full moon therefore could be asking you to think about the ins and outgoings in your situation and how they impact on your connection to others, or also your longer term future, the Sun and Venus in house 8. But house 8 isn't just about money, it's also about where we're most invested. And the second house, as I mentioned, can be about how we feel about ourselves. So if your links to the significant other person in your life are strong, I don't feel, unless there is a financial situation you need to work on together, that this will be so obvious. But if you don't feel that you're quite in the frame of mind at the moment to connect with others quite in the way you would like, this full moon could make you more conscious of that. As I mentioned, however, Saturn in the part of your situation to do with your ideas and your everyday environment and anything to do with technology is in an opposition with Mercury, and that is exact on the 2nd day. But through the first 4 days, they're going across the 3rd and the 9th houses. So if you did need to discuss something, Mercury, talk and thought, and it was serious, Saturn, or you needed to be the person who takes responsibility, Saturn, or you're leaning into a situation in quite an earthy way, Saturn, that could feed in to that full moon. So there could be some tense conversations basically about who contributes or gives what to a situation emotionally or financially, or if there are some changes that you need to make, then you're going to take them quite seriously, I feel. However, there is a sensational planetary alignment which I feel will supersede the moon and also the opposition with Saturn and Mercury. And that is between Jupiter, the planet of hope, in your 5th house, which helps you to manifest your talent, your flair, and to set your intentions towards the things that will bring joy into your life, not just this month, but over the next 10 months, whilst it goes through the sign of Taurus, which shares your earth tropicity, but it's forging a super dynamic link to Mars in the sign of Virgo. Now, Mars in Virgo is actually a very self-sacrificing sign for Mars to be in. Mars can be very much about manifesting our individual ego. But in the 9th house for you, it's more about philosophy, travel, being adventurous, perhaps even being a bit more rugged about the type of exercise we do. But the link with Jupiter is really great. And if you wanted to be a bit more, show a little bit more devilment around your social life or even around your romantic situation, particularly with that simmering, smouldering, very sensual link between the Sun and Venus, which develops as this month goes on, that aspect could give you a lot of push to go for what you really desire. And for a rather cautious sign like yours, that could feel a little bit challenging. But that's where that opposition between Saturn and Mercury is interesting, because maybe you need to have the conversations that then create the platform for you to go for it. But don't underestimate the power of Mars's link to Jupiter. That could be very lucky, but also it can give you a lot of buoyancy and a lot of fearlessness. So that's really encouraging. Also, just to tell you that Mercury then, also in the sign of Virgo, like Mars, forges a terrific link with Jupiter in week 2. Now, Mercury, of course, is checked early on by Saturn, but where Saturn is about resistance, Jupiter is about expansion. So week 2 could also be quite exciting for your social, romantic interests, or just going out and about and really enjoying your life. What's not to like? Well, it's just that Jupiter, followed by Uranus, are both going to get into a bit of a tete-a-tete with the Sun. Jupiter is much more malleable in a way, because this square with the Sun through the first 10 days just suggests that when it comes to resources, and really, because the full moon is influenced by Saturn's opposition to Mercury, you're going to have that cautious imprint in your thinking, I feel, which is part of your nature anyway. But the Sun's right angle to Jupiter, especially when Jupiter is in house 5, which can be about speculation and risk, and the 8th house can be about large sums of money, is just saying to you, don't be overconfident about something. So say, for example, someone shares an opportunity with you that seems really exciting. You really need to do your research and scrutinize it in the way that you have a talent for, very cautiously. Also on the 4th, Mercury goes into its pre-retrograde shadow. It doesn't go into retrograde until the 23rd. It comes out of retrograde in the middle of September, but it doesn't come out of the shadow until the 30th of September. The shadow period is when Mercury is slow, or then in the subsequent retrograde itself. So pretty well for about 8 weeks from the 4th, I think when it comes to contracts, travel, higher education, expansion, anything to do with big conversations that you have, just be conscious of making sure that everything you do is verified very carefully. Now, sometimes we can't control everything, and that's one of the things about Mercury retrogrades. We can revisit things and try to make sure that, for example, that before we go on a journey, we check our passport. We don't just assume that it's in date, we check it. We also make sure that if there's any inoculations we need, we get them, get the timings of those planned in advance. We also check the weight that you can carry on the plane, or what would happen if the journey in some way got delayed. Would you have the available funds to stay for a night in a hotel and stuff like this? So having some contingencies would be really important. But I must stress that Mercury can, in its retrograde phases, also give us a lot. It gives us an opportunity to think about things in a more inward way. That doesn't mean a bad way. So Mercury in the 9th house is very expansive. It's very Jupiterian. But in retrograde, the Jupiterian energy of philosophy can be turned inwards to become like spiritual truths. So in terms of your motivation, Mercury slows down from the 4th. It still forges a gorgeous link with Jupiter in week 2. And of course there is a kind of reflective glory there. Jupiter very 9th housey. So it's not all bad. But then of course we have the new location of the North Node, which for you, since the 17th of July, it's been in your 4th house. And over the next year and a half, you are going to find yourself evolving quite a lot around your emotional situation or your home life, your family situation. But the North Node forges a beautiful link to Venus, despite Venus's retrograde. So something around a property matter could give you a lot of pleasure or a lot of uplift, particularly in the first week of this month. It may not, even be particularly material. You're someone who has a real understanding of practical security, but maybe what you gain from that influence is how security can work in terms of connections, how deeply we're invested. So for example, if you move somewhere and it's not quite what you want, if the light's good, it's quiet or it's busy, depending on what suits you, it has the space or the layout that suits you, or just the perfect kitchen or bathroom, or you can see how you would amend that. But if it's meeting your aspirations, even if it's not quite exactly as you want, you could get some uplift. But it doesn't have to work through the material plane only, because remember, Venus in the 8th house is where we're most invested. So although Venus can be about money, it can be about desire, and in Leo it can definitely for you be about sex. So if you're in a relationship which is pretty good, you get on well, you have an accord, you may be very constructive with one another, you may be good friends, but if it lacks spark, that could be something you become more aware of this month. Doesn't make it a bad relationship, doesn't make it one that you're going to want to end. But as the Sun clashes with Uranus after the clash with Jupiter, that's much more abrasive. The Sun square Jupiter has an upside in that it can push us to be much more generous, especially to those who aren't so well off. But Uranus is really the rebel planet, and in the 5th house it's wanting you to manifest your individual talent and being, whereas the 8th house is where you've got to be all in to get everything from it. Otherwise things evolve, because it's a very phoenix-like energy, ends and beginnings. So if there was a relationship that you felt, despite its strength, was never going to have the soul purpose that you really crave, I think the retreat in Venus and its conjunction and subsequent cazimi on the 13th with the Sun could really see you hankering for something that really moves your soul. And because the new moon, which occurs on the 16th, is also in your 8th house of evolutions, and it squares powerfully Uranus, the following month could be one of turbulence if you want to leave something that's not really triggering you in an exciting and passionate way. So I think how invested you feel is going to be tested this month, to be honest. But there is going to be opportunities to make progress in terms of being more enterprising, adventurous and independent. So that is in tandem with where you need to be really committed. So something will have to give if there's a weakness. And then when the Sun moves into your sister Earth sign of Virgo on the 23rd, that is all about opening your life up, feeling more freedom loving, getting to the truth of what's really important. Mercury goes retrograde the same day through to the middle of September. And that's where there could be some changes around travel plans. You may need to talk to an advisor, perhaps even around a contractual matter. Do check the small print. Mercury retrograde's not something to take no note of, but it is also something to see as an opportunity. So your philosophies could be altered by the end of September once the post-retrograde shadow finishes. But on the 28th, Mars moves out of house 9, but for you moves into a fabulous area. Mars may be detrimented technically in the sign of Libra, not its best next 6 weeks in terms of technical astrology, but for you, Mars is going to give you a lot more authority, a lot more desire to assert yourself. Mars is also a planet that's exalted in your sign, in Capricorn, so you have a good relationship with Mars. So Mars moving into the 10th house is very Capricorn-like. So I think you can grasp an opportunity to say how you feel and let other people know that they need to take you more seriously. But Uranus does go retrograde on the 29th through to the 27th of January. This is annual, playing catch up with the already retreating Venus, then Mercury from the 23rd. And of course we have Saturn, your ruler, and we also have Neptune and Pluto already retreating and retracing their steps. But then on the 31st, we have that second highly significant event that I flagged at the outset. And that sees the blue moon, the sturgeon moon, in a conjunction with your ruler Saturn. And that's going to make you very serious in terms of your analysis of conversations over the following 2 weeks. So for example, if you did want to leave something, whether it's a job, a friendship, a group interest, or a romantic relationship, and someone resists that because of how they feel, they see it differently, they don't see it like you, but you're having to be really strong-willed, Saturn is going to copper bottom your desire to make a change, but it could also see your communication reach icicle levels of temperature. So you may really say, look, this is what I mean, with Mars helping you to assert yourself and Mars being in a quincunx with Saturn. It's not a great mix. Getting the balance between what you want, the glory of you, which is the 10th house Mars, and the 9th house in terms of what you believe is right for you in terms of your personal freedom and independence. Saturn could see some tense exchanges, some rather strident and difficult conversations, to be honest, but nobody's going to leave your life that you don't want to leave your life and you're not truly invested in, and that they are truly invested in you. So only weak ties are going to be affected by this, or weak interests, or a job where you just don't really feel appreciated. So this is a month when you can really start off by showing your intent, particularly when it comes to your talent and personality. Mars and Jupiter, and also Mercury and Jupiter, glorious. But they are saying pretty early on, some kind of escape plan may be in the works if you're not feeling really fulfilled. And because the Sun and the retreating Venus come together on the 13th, it could be around a romantic relationship, it could be around a business tie, could be around a financial arrangement, but you need to stick with your higher truth. And that's the real message of this month for you from the planets above.